Okay, what we have here, if you look at the wire harness, somebody has been in this because that black electrical tape is fresh and it's there. So somebody definitely has been bothering this wire harness. Also, I see where there's a connector there. Somebody has spliced a wire together. I don't particularly like the connectors. I used to like them until I ran into a problem where I crimped the wires and heated it up because it has heat shrink tube around it that is sealable because they have glue on the inside. But I still had an intermittent problem, particularly on wires that have very thin strands. It's hard to crimp them. So if you can solder, it's always best to solder. I do that all the time. Solder those wires together, you will have a good connection, and then use the heat shrink tubing with the glue to seal it up. Okay, so here's the input speed sensor wire. I pulled that through.
Off of a used vehicle. They have the same wire color. Solder them in. And once I solder them in, tape them up. And the connector for input speed sensor. Okay. This vehicle had a lot of issues here. Cut off the bad ends. Strip this wire. Something I'm going to do. Skin these two. Enough. Now we have color here. This is a green with a white stripe. This one here is a green with a blue stripe, and it's the same which is on here, so there wouldn't be any problem putting them together here. So I'm going to put these together and solder them together. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I have a lot of these crimps here, and these are shrink tubing crimps, but what I'm going to do, as you see here, I take this and I cut the end off right where the metal piece is. All I want is this part here. because I'm going to use it and shrink it over it. So I'll slide this up here like that. This is if you don't have shrink tubing. I don't like using these things anyway. Let me see. So this wire here is the green with the white. So you take the green with the white here. Solder this in. Once I solder that in, I'm going to put this over and melt that over top. But first, let me solder it in. What you want to use is some rosin core solder. Rosin core has the flux built inside, so you don't have to do that. Make sure your solder gun is heated up. Put this in a position. Hold this in a good position. Let me see, where can I put this thing? Like that. I'm gonna solder it right there.
Now you slip the piece that you cut over the solder, and I use the solder gun or iron, and I just melt it a bit. That's just to keep it in place so it doesn't go anywhere. I'm going to use a little butane torch and heat it up later on, so I don't want it to move. So now I have to get the other connector, the other wire part, and cut off the end again of the butt connector so I can just use the tubing part, the part that's going to shrink. And I put that on the other side. Make sure you slide it on before you solder it, because you have to break your wire in order to get that shrink tubing on. Twist them on. Just make sure you have them on where you can get that shrink tubing on when you solder it also. And once you twist it, you have to get the soldering. Make sure that it go over top of it. Okay. So now you solder the other wire. One thing about soldering, excuse me, you're supposed to put the iron on the wire itself, let it heat up, and then the solder will flow. However, Sometimes you can just heat the solder and let the solder flow onto the wire, because it will be hot enough where it will heat the wire up faster. Also, the solder should be runny. It shouldn't be like a dull silver. It should be shiny. That's how you know you got a good solder. So if it's dull and it's not down inside the wire, then it's not the way it's supposed to be. And when you solder right, you won't have to worry about any connections. Okay, now you take and slide that piece over the shrink tubing, and then take a little torch, a butane torch, and quickly just brush over it until you shrink the tubing.
Okay, that shrink tubing that I was using, the part that I cut off, it has glue. Once you heat it up, it glues itself around and protects it. So you don't have to put any tape around this. However, I like to do it anyway, so I'm going to do it. Vehicle had some major wire harness problems, and it probably, somebody's been inside doing something. It probably was the shop that sent it here, but they won't tell you anyway, so you have to know how to trace everything down. Okay, so let me do this one here. Speed sensor that was broken. Now I'm going to take this input speed sensor and stick it right back up through this harness up here and hook it back up to the input speed sensor. These wires are fluctuating. The ohms are moving all over the place. If I touch the wire harness, they're moving up 20, going up to 3. There's definitely a problem. I think that they have a problem in the wire harness, and most all of those wires are affected. They're probably corroded somewhere. Something is not right. So now I will have to go inside this wire harness. So I got to see if there's something that the people who brought it here wants me to do. I have to take loose all of this insulation here, all up here, and find out what's going.
You got a funnel?
It's something I don't really want to do. So if they say do it, I'll do it. If they say don't, I won't.